Good morning and welcome. This is Sunrise Daily. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Well, it's a beautiful Wednesday morning from here in Lagos. I'm Kayode Okikelu. Welcome.
Well, isn't it just normal or natural for us to say, okay, it would seem like outcries to have a way of having impact. Just yesterday, of course, on Monday, we had that information blackout on all the front pages of all the newspapers, and then yesterday when we had that conversation with the legislator who moved the bill for the amendment of the bills, he revealed that he suspended work on it now for further consultation, of course. The jury is out there on whether or not he was really the one that was doing it, but, you know, at least he owned it. So that's that, I guess. But is that it really? Maybe that's one that's generated some reaction. Another one that has generated a lot of reaction that has also kind of seen an output is the nomination of Loretta Onochie as INEC Commissioner. And can we also say that that's generated just the reaction people are looking for when the Senate rejected her nomination?
You know, it was a roller coaster up to this point. I mean, this started last year, by the way. So, I mean, months of protest, as it were. I mean, from the very day that it was revealed that the president nominated her, I mean, it was, I'm not sure if I've seen so much, do I say outcry, so much protests concerning a nomination in recent times. I mean, for me, that's perhaps one of the, I mean, you see the PDP, of course, they have their protests, but not just the PDP. You had CSOs also submitting protest letters to the Senate. So it was a big one, really. So months and months, eventually the screening came, and then she put out a statement, or at least her side of the story. And, you know, the choice of words for me was quite instructive, because the questions were, are you a member of the APC? But she particularly said that, well, since 2019, she had not had anything to do with any political party. I'm just paraphrasing. So it was not really a yes or no, because there was an affidavit that was sworn, that was presented to her. Anyway, so that went. And
meanwhile, people also went to all kinds of social media and pulled out more recent files or proofs.
Yeah, I mean, so it was all out there. So a lot of people were looking to the Senate, at least the Senate committee, and eventually the Senate to do the needful according to them. And so we had a conversation, of course, on channels with the chairman of the Senate Committee on INEC, and he spoke about that. And eventually yesterday we got the news, but that's just one side of the story, because listening to Senator Gaya give a reason for not approving her nomination was also another thing entirely, because a lot of people thought the reason would be as a result of the protests, as a result of the petitions that were written, as a result of the outcry, as you said. But for the Senate committee, they said it was because of federal character. And I recall that during that screening, she said that, well, my nomination will not be violating federal character, because this certain person that you think is from where I am is representing another state, therefore I am fit to actually be in that position, and I will not be, or at least my approval will not be violating the federal character principle. And I think that was a major one for me, because it was as though the Senate said, well, we didn't, I mean, in fact, the other person that was rejected, in quote, was as a result of protests and, you know, petitions that were written against him. And I'm not sure his petitions were as much as the ones that came for Mrs. Onochie. So it's a lot for a lot of Nigerians thinking, so whatever happened to our own side of the story?
Well, I don't think it went for nothing. In the first place, where I would want to begin, just as you said, it started last year, where I would want to begin the conversation would be, why in the first place was that nomination made when clearly it would violate, at least seem to violate, a federal character commission that's been on for like since the 70s. And if anything, we haven't jettisoned the law, it is still there. Now, Mayor Gbamujembu, according to, you know, records made public, is a national commissioner that is supervising 3 states, any other but Delta. Delta is not one of them, Rivers, Bayelsa, and I think one other states. Delta is not one of the states, even though one of the things that we hear is that an INEC commissioner is supposed to be supervising, you know, her state and all of that. But that's, you know, by the way, for me, the judgment of who should be supervising, I think, would depend on whoever is administering, the authorities. What the question that I'm just asking in my mind is, was this unknown to those who made this proposition, or was it just a political choice to put Ms. Onochie out there for this job, knowing that, I mean, of all the questions, I mean, everyone knows that she is the social media aide to the president. I don't recall any question being asked as to whether or not that post has been relinquished. That's one. Secondly, up until very, very recently, even the former president Obasanjo, who made it public that he is no longer a member of any political party, cheering his, membership card of a political party in public. There were still insinuations that he was still very interested in politics. That's for someone who has done it publicly. How much more someone who, is still so very recent and so very fresh and all of that. So we're human beings. Ultimately, these things will always play out. And I think it's important for us to pay attention to that. The federal character principle is not new to us. It's been on with us for so long. How come that didn't play out in the considerations that were being made? That's a question that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. Is it something that is unknown to us?
Clearly, I don't think this is over just yet. I mean, it raised a lot of questions, like you said, and I think we should pay attention to those issues because they seem to still be there. I mean, this outcry seems to have yielded a result, but then, like you said, the processes.
The one other outcry that I would love to have is about this electric car.
Outcry.
Yeah, I mean, outcry doesn't have to be negative all the time.
Well, okay, now that you say that, I recently saw a video. I think a man just got an electric car, a Tesla, really, and he was, I think he was showing off to his mother or someone. Anyway,
yeah.
An older woman, and she was wowed. The fact that she opened the hood, there was no engine. He opened the bonnet, the
so-called bonnet.
Yeah, there was no engine, and the man had to tell her that what's making this car run? It's just right underneath your feet when you sit in the car, and she was just wowed, like, oh my goodness, this is really lovely. And a lot of people commenting saying, I wish we had this in Nigeria and the rest, and not just having to import it into Nigeria, because I mean things are made based on the peculiarity of the origin, as it were. So people were thinking, how about we have this sort of development in Nigeria, especially because that's the trend these days, renewable energy, green energy, clean energy, and the rest. And just yesterday we saw something play out in Unilag. Well, it'd been 3 years in the making, and it was officially unveiled, should I say, and it is let me just wait for this to come up. There you go. It's an electric bus, as it were. And the good thing about this is not that all these knockdowns that you try to adapt to the Nigerian, environment. This was actually largely Akoka made, not even Nigerian made or Lagos made. Akoka made, and I'm talking the software, and I think 63% of the hardware really is Akoka made, and it's just amazing to see that. I mean, it might be small for you. I think this is a 6-seater bus for campus shuttle, but the wider application of this is what is quite interesting. I know there are talks about, you look at a Tesla and say, well, a Tesla looks more advanced than this, but don't forget that these things start from somewhere, and if we give the required support, the required funding. Support is vague. Let me just talk about funding, because these things don't come cheap, honestly.
Absolutely.
So we need to do proper research. Fund this very well. I'm glad the ministry was there. NADDC was there as well, just to look at this thing and see how we can apply it to the wider context of Nigeria. You might say there is no constant power supply, but don't forget we have solar, constant solar. That sun that hits you every day can come to good use.
As unlimited power supply, UPS.
Absolutely.
If you, one thing that the beginner is not the worker. That's what the Holy Grail says. We remember what China phones looked like in year 2000, 2001.
What it sounded like, especially.
What it sounded like. So, but today, the big tech literally makes everything that they make from China. So your most advanced phones, your most expensive phones, they are mostly from China. So who says that that can't be done in Nigeria? I remember, this is not the first time really that we're making cars in Nigeria. I mean, we know, everyone talks about Innocent, for instance. I also remember that there was a car made during the Babangida government. I think it was a Proda. The name of the car was Proda then, but that was the last I heard of it. It was an engine car, but let's start from somewhere. What did we do with that one? It's sad that was the last I ever heard of that one. I wish we had, stepped up on it. We would definitely not be where we are today. Also remember the young man Ben, I think from Benue State.
Yes.
That's also done something phenomenal actually along that line. So this kind of thing ought to be encouraged. Let the people who are behind this project, let their faces be out there for all to see, and give them all the support that they need, because it is time to do what CBN says all the time: buy Nigerian to grow Nigeria. But there is a lot more about Nigeria in the papers this morning. We'll be right back.
Begin with Daily Trust, and the lead one. National Assembly meets Buhari over insecurity. Others will see the riders. We must restore peace. President. Our meeting beyond dinner party. Lawan, just in case you were thinking that. Reps present 19-point demands. Why Senate rejected Onache as INEC commissioner. So all of that you'll find on page 5 of the Daily Trust. And there's a picture, of course, of that meeting, that dinner, which the President of the Senate says is more than just dinner. But right under that, you see reality, which we're facing right now. Woman, 4 kids killed in Zamfara airstrikes. It's on page 4. If you want to get the context of this one, you have to check the inside pages of the Daily Trust. But see this one. You probably knew this, but just the extent. Extortion along Apapa ports worth 100 million naira daily. That's in parentheses. Who is saying that? Extortion along Apapa ports worth 100 million naira daily.
What?
Oh, yes.
Not taxes.
Good point, actually.
Not levies.
Wow.
100 million naira daily. That's what?
That's 700 million naira per week. That's 2.8 billion naira per month. Illegal stuff. Page 19 of the Daily Trust. Wonder who is saying that. Want context. Okay. There's a couple of other stories, but let me just give you this one. Road crashes killed 279 in Ogun, Edo in 6 months. Page 34, read, wonder why. It's really sad, honestly. In 6 months. There's, of course, sports at the back page. Let's leave it there for Daily Trust.
I'm particularly interested in the front page of the Nigerian News Direct this morning. And it's a product of the National Electoral Offences Commission. That's where you have it there. Senate approves 20-year jail term for ballot box snatchers. Page 4 of the paper, of course, will give you details of how that is going to play. That bill has passed third reading and has been passed by the Senate. Let's hope that it actually sees the light of day. That's what you have on the front page of the Nigerian News Direct this morning. We must do everything to end insecurity, Buhari tells Senate. I'm wondering exactly what Senate can do about that one. The details you'll find on page 2.
A lot, actually. A lot.
Okay.
I think everybody can do a lot. I mean, there are different levels to this. I mean, it will form a major part of our conversation. So I get what you're doing. You're teasing.
I'm really just wondering. I mean, what can Senate do? Okay. That's what you have on the front page of the Nigerian News Direct. And a good number of other stories on the front page there. But let's leave it there for the paper this morning. Morning, Markwe.
Gentlemen, I'm taking a look at some of the stories right on the front page this morning, and I'd say I'm spoiled for choice. But, excuse me, let's quickly take a look at what The Guardian has to say. Take a look at this. Lawmakers buckle, suspend media censorship bill, reject Onache. Press bill, we're suspending process for more consultation, says sponsor. Falana urges NPAN, NUJ. Okay, it's the Guardian, people. I'm hoping that will pop up. Can you see it? NPAN, NUJ, NGE to form new code of conduct. Ozekome, federal character as reason for rejecting Onochie face saving. Okay. I want to read that again. Ozekome, federal character as reason for rejecting Onochie face saving. Well, let us hope that that's what it is, because for people who know about that rejection, they say that the battle might not be over just yet, because the tenure within the tenure of the person due from Delta could soon expire, and if she's not represented, then it could happen that since Mrs. Onochie was rejected, that because there was somebody from Delta, then maybe her name could be represented. So let us see what happens, you know, for that. Maybe this is a face-saving measure, maybe it's not, maybe it's deliberate, a deliberate calculation. That could also be a possibility. So you might want to look at that story. PDP insists on more efforts to secure Electoral Act. Buhari parleys lawmakers over insecurity. Hire private contractors to fight insurgency, reps tell Buhari. So all of those stories are lumped up under this particular story. Lawmakers buckle, suspend media censorship bill, reject Onochie. Well, I hope that it was not the statement of Mr. Odebumi, that's Honorable Odebumi, on the program yesterday that we're relying on. I mean, we need to hear something more concrete on the floor of the National Assembly with regards to the media censorship bill, or what is now being called the media censorship bill. Page 2 read is where the details lie. Look at these ones. COVID-19, panic in Unilag as medical center confirms surge in patients. Lagos records 153 of Nigeria's new 166 cases. WHO, Delta variant leading to high hospitalizations, deaths now in 104 countries. UK to support Nigeria in tracking variants. It's a page 2 read. And then you have a number of other stories on the corner. Senate okays Electoral Offences Commission, 20-year jail for offenders. So the Electoral Act still very much in the headlines. But let's leave it there for The Guardian.
Well, what you have on the corner there is big and bold on the front page of the Daily Times newspaper. Senate goes tough on ballot box snatchers. Others, that's how the Daily Times leads this morning. Passes electoral offences bill, prescribes 20-year jail term for ballot box snatchers. Bows to pressure, rejects Onochie as INEC commissioner, confirms 5 others. So that's how the Daily Times is hitting the ground running, as they say this morning.
The question I'm asking around that one is that to say that we're still going to be using ballot boxes and not electronic voting? Unless there are electronic boxes that are going to be snatched.
So that one you have to say maybe server snatcher or computer snatcher or hacker. But I mean, it's important. Some of those things are quite important, because if there's no ballot box in the context of election you're conducting, then how would this law apply? But
no, really, I mean, it's important to draw that out. Is this a way of saying, okay, since we have electoral offences commission, there have to be offences, and if it's electronic voting and there are no ballot boxes, again, well, we haven't seen the bill, so maybe there are other angles to look at.
But it's good to have ballot box snatchers go to jail, really. I mean, we know there are 774 local governments in Nigeria, but what you see, you might not see that on that front page, what you have there, but let me just give you that one. 774 kidnapped, 222 killed in Kaduna in just 3 months.
They are not figures.
Oh, absolutely.
They're
These
human
are people.
beings. 774 people kidnapped. 224 people killed in 3 months. How many are women? How many are children? And what's right now happening to those families? Those are questions that really do beg answers.
And don't forget the Bethel Baptist students, obviously part of this. They're still in captivity, as well as others. That's Daily Times this morning.
Well, the Blueprint newspaper has this one on its front page. Buhari transmits 13.98 trillion naira 2022 budget estimates to National Assembly. Project 6.54 trillion naira revenue, up from 5.60 trillion naira in 2021. Proposes 5.62 trillion naira deficit, 2.62 trillion naira VAT, and Senate set to pass MTEF FSP Thursday. But this is what we have on the front page. 6.54 trillion naira revenue, 2.62 trillion naira VAT. That will come to something in the region of what? Almost about 9 trillion. And the question we're asking is, and if there's going to be a deficit of 5.62 trillion naira, someone needs to very quickly work on that. What's happening at the ports?
That's meant to be a revenue earner.
100 million naira is being lost.
But I mean, these people pay they pay the right duties and excise and all that. So this is additional cost, which they will honestly not want to pay, I believe.
Anyway, that's what you have on the front page. I'm pretty sure that we'll get details in due time. Right under the nameplate, INEC, Senate throws out Buhari's nominee, Onoche, OK's 5 others as national commissioners. Rejection of presidential aid victory for democracy, that's PDP, as Malque said, and I think you also mentioned earlier. We probably haven't heard the last of that one, but I guess we've heard the last of it for now. Right under the picture you see there, despite our challenges, we are still a lucky country. That's ascribed to the president, and the story is on page 8. After coordinated media campaign, sponsor suspends press bill. Find that story on page 5 of the paper this morning. Senate OK's 20-year jail term for ballot snatchers. Story is on page 6. Okay.
Well, let's take a look at the Vanguard for you. They have this one. Use mercenaries to fight insurgency, reps tell federal government. They have a number of riders to that story. Recommend special training of 40,000 policemen. Installation of CCTV cameras on highways in major cities, public centers. You know, we used to have the CCTV cameras in Abuja, and you still see the poles. You have to ask, how did they steal them? Because right now, all you see are the poles stripped bare. You could tell that they were CCTV cameras, you know, put there at some point. So you have to ask, which agencies were monitoring while these cameras were being stolen? Or was nobody monitoring? So I think it goes beyond just putting the cameras. You can put them today, award huge contracts, and even then, there was huge controversy at that time over how much had been used to award those contracts. And then, you know, we left them to be stolen. But these are part of the recommendations again. Installation of CCTV cameras on highways in major cities, public centers. Call for local security committees across 774 local government areas. Recommend use of open grazing, ranching in states not opposed to both. Reps Amendment Bill 6 stiffer penalties for use of unlicensed firearms. Recommends local production of light weapons. So that's also right there in the story, the big story. Page 5 is where you'll find details. And they also have that story for you. Electoral Offences Bill, snatch ballot box papers, get 20 years jail term. And I was wondering, you mean that? I don't think that precludes the fact that we will vote electronically. I mean, there should be an allowance of both, really. I mean, where it is feasible and possible, electronic voting, well, I don't think that would remove papers. And if you look at this one, insecurity, Nigeria lucky to remain together despite challenges. That's according to the president. Well, luck is good, intentional is better. Middle Belt Forum warns on imminent food scarcity as herdsmen destroy 45 farmlands in Plateau. Well, food is already high up, but look at this. Imminent food scarcity. As a page 6 read, let's leave it there for the Vanguard newspapers.
Well, definitely so many issues to raise, but we are Done with the papers right now. Up next are the issues for the day. After this break, stay with us.
Towards the end of the first quarter of 2021, the numbers of daily COVID-19 cases were falling, and the dreaded second wave was almost over, so it seemed. But at the beginning of July, cases started climbing again, especially in Lagos. The governor of the state, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, who said the positivity rate had gone up from 1.1% at the end of June to 6.6% as at July the 8th, gives increased isolation center occupancy as further proof. This was corroborated by the head of the isolation center at the Lagos University Teaching Hospital.
Once you see that the numbers are going up and it's consistently so, you have to, have a high index and say, okay, this is what's happening. Among those people testing, how many of them are turning back positive? It's a very huge marker at hospitals and at health facilities also. When you see the number of people who are reporting with these symptoms increasing, and that is why the reporting system is fashioned in such a way that at facilities, there are, of course, we know there are what's called disease surveillance and notification of DSNOs.
In the early days of COVID-19 in 2020, contact tracing helped keep the infection contained. The story is different now, even though Delta, a variant of concern, is now on the loose. The Delta variant is reputed to be at least 50% more transmissible than the others.
Well, the truth of the matter is we stopped contact tracing as soon as we had transited into community transmission, which means that the virus was everywhere, is now everywhere. There's no unidirectionality about it. It's not from one person to another. It's one person can affect 1.6 people, or better still, 10 people can infect 16 others. Oh, this Delta variant has been found to be 50% more transmissible.
Ironically, restrictions on the populace are not being increased. The simple instructions remain the same.
The issue is back to hands, face, space. Wash your hands, wear a mask, maintain physical distance.
Now the message is, there's a new virus in town. This one is even more easily transmissible. So simply step up doing what you were doing before. Only this time, do it more effectively.
Religious houses are also allowed a maximum of 50% capacity at any time. Unfortunately, according to the Lagos State government, 18% of travelers into the Muritala Mohammed Airport in Lagos provided wrong contact details, making it impossible to monitor them. The borders remain cautiously open in an attempt to balance life and livelihoods. Passengers from India, South Africa, Brazil and Turkey are required to observe a mandatory isolation period on arrival.
So there was the original strain of COVID-19. Then there was the Alpha strain, which was 50% deadlier. And now there is a Delta strain, which is 50% deadlier than the Alpha strain. Where do we go from here? Let's head to Abuja for this conversation.
Thank you, Ayo. We have with us in the studio Dr. Yaya Disu, who's the head of Risk Communication Division at the National Center for Disease Control. And we also have Dr. Kiela Ishako, who's a virologist and also public health epidemiologist, and also a senior lecturer at the Nasarawa State University. Gentlemen, you're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, this particular strain is causing a panic, it would seem. And some states, Lagos State in particular, has declared a third wave. It's a third wave here. Let me start with you from the NCDC.
Anyway, before now, we knew third wave was going to be inevitable. Third wave is just about, at some point, you have decrease in the number of cases. At another time, you start having rise in cases. And then by the time you look at the number of cases from the beginning of the outbreak declaration, and you will see the first wave, the peak, and then the trough, then you see the peak again, second. So the third one is starting. But what is important is what we're able to do to ensure that the height of that wave, as in the amplitude, we're able to reduce it, and then it doesn't go, I mean, the width is also contracted. So that is determined by whatever we're going to do. But for us to say we're going to avoid the third wave, yeah, it is not possible. So it's better we face the reality, we're able to do what we need to do to stem this. So it's here, cases are coming up now.
Do we really need to be scared of this third wave because of this Delta variant? I mean, from what you have heard and read, we understand that 2 people lost their lives 2 days ago in Oyo State. It's already taken the lives of 2 people already. What measures do you think we should be putting in place right now? Because, I mean, as one of the respondents in that report did say, we've since stopped contact tracing, and this is going to be a bit clumsy right now. But with this particular strain, how much caution should we be applying right now?
Yeah, so thank you for the platform and thank you for having us. As an addendum, I just want to add to what my brother, Dr. Drisu, said. So epidemiologically, we have what is called the EPID curve. So it is a curve that looks at the number of active cases, whether they are increasing or declining. You can actually look at this EPID curve and actually come up with strategic actions to be able to mitigate or be able to control this EPID curve. So we are on a third wave. This is because we open our borders. Issues of surveillance has declined. Issues of adherence to non-pharmaceutical measures have actually declined. People don't also observe mass gathering again. We are saying 50 people. You go to our worship centers, you see thousands.
50% capacity.
You see 50% capacity. You see a lot of people congregating. It's only in Lagos and Abuja you see a few people walk with their face masks, and people don't also use hand sanitizers. And so we open our borders. Truly, we're on the third wave. The first wave is the drivers for the first wave was issues of misinformation, issues of people not believing that COVID-19 was real. So we had the first wave. And then the issues of non-pharmaceutical measures and lockdown actually managed the first wave. The second wave came, and then, we could not also manage it within December, January 2021. So there are a lot of sporadic rising in number of cases, number of mortality rates increase. And then we're also be able to manage it with robust advocacy, just like what my brother is doing. And then also the issues of vaccination came in to be able to tame the second wave. But the third wave is that we have a new variant. We need to get concerned, and that's what your question is all about. We need to really get concerned. This is because in WHO classification of variants, we have variants of interest and variants of concern. So the Delta variant is not a variant of interest alone, is a variant of concern. This is because of the transmissibility. In fact, in other cases like Sydney, in countries like Sydney and France and Finland, they have now epidemiologically from their data seen that the transmissibility is above 50%, is about 70%. You also need to look at the severity of the diseases. So what calls for concern is that we need to, government in particular need to push forward first, and then all of us need to queue in behind government and to actually see how we can re-strategize our measures that we have taken before. It is quite key.
When you say that the transmissibility is above 50% and almost at 70%, what exactly do you mean? Is it that somehow it tends to live longer, or somehow it is lighter and so can travel faster? Is there all those conversations initially when COVID broke about how, it cannot travel in vapors, so later on it became that it could travel in vapors, and, there were all of that conversation. So when you say it is highly transmissible, what precisely do we mean?
So epidemiologically, you need to look at the incubation period. So if you look at transmissibility, you need to look at the probability of transmission, one, and also look at the incubation periods. The Delta variant has a very shorter incubation period and affects individuals within a larger population much more faster than other variants, like the Alpha variant, the Delta variant. Like in the UK now, it accounts for over 82%, the Delta variants. So the transmissibility, it came, some few weeks ago, but the number of cases that are being infected by the Delta variant is quite high. So it has a very short incubation period, and the cluster of transmission, the probability, there's what we call the probability of transmission within a population, is very, very huge. It's very, very large. So, so that is what is meant by that.
There have been talks that this particular variant is not easily detectable. By that, sometimes they do tests. It's like it doesn't just stay in the nasal area or the what they call that now, the breathing area of the body. I don't know whether I'm getting the terms right, but I'm sure you understand what I'm trying to say. That it travels almost immediately to the lungs. So sometimes the signs and symptoms of an infection are already there before it is detected. How correct is that? Is it true?
Anyway, I think our emphasis should be on whether it is Delta variants or not, because when somebody is infected with a particular variant, you don't know, and it may be anything. And it's on protective measures. What do we need to do to protect against getting this virus at all? Because if we begin to look at, oh, yes, this happens so fast, and then people start thinking that, okay, this could be this, they said this comes with this kind of symptoms or whatever. But the reality is, just like every organism, we find a way to survive. There is what we call, there is this survival tendency. No matter what barrier any organism is facing, but it wants to beat whatever that barrier in order to continue to live, just like human beings too. So that way, the virus will find a way to adapt, to mutate, to beat whatever mechanism that you have in place. So, and that means we as humans, we need to be smarter. We need to use all that within our control to enable to fight it. So the reality is, yes, it's more difficult to detect in the sense that you cannot, when you do the test, normal test you do, you won't know whether this is Delta variant or what, unless they do genomic sequencing. And that is why the NCDC now said, oh, all positive cases, they need to do genomic sequencing for us to be able to know which variants are we dealing with, since we have variants that are highly transmissible across the world. And that is the reason why we're able to detect what we have even detected recently. What we're even doing is to also do retrospective sequencing, samples that have also been collected in the past. That will give us insight whether we're having community transmission or not. And then
of this particular variant,
exactly, right? Yes, because investigations are all going. And for us to be able to know the extent of spread so that we'll be able to tailor our intervention to this. But generally, we just need to let people know that preventive and social measures, prevention and these non-pharmaceutical interventions, they are key. Wash your hands and then avoid going out if it is not necessary, as in wear your face mask, social distancing. And then if you are showing symptoms, then you need to report. And the 6232 is there for us to call. UN Nigeria, in collaboration with Government of Nigeria and European Union, we launched a HANDS campaign. HANDS is an acronym that emphasizes those non-pharmaceutical interventions. And then again, it's a long-term social and behavior change. And this was done in anticipation of the third wave. Although we focused first on high-risk states, 7 of them, and now the plan is to scale it up to other states, particularly with these variants. So it requires all of society approach. That is what we need to emphasize now, because this is where we need all our religious leaders to be on board, the local government, community-based organizations, the market women. Everybody needs to come to work together. These campaign materials are available, and then we will share with them. And there are 3 components of this: the media campaign, which was launched late in May, and then the school campaign. There's a jingle, something that looks like cartoon, Captain Bubble, in the states where this is being implemented. So they are working with schools and with the school authorities to ensure that this gets to students. And
interestingly now, schools are on holiday. And I think it is going to be a bit difficult to Maybe not so difficult. It's a good thing that the campaigns have been launched. But as we are all aware, you know, a lot of people had already abandoned the non-pharmaceutical interventions. In fact, oftentimes face masks are worn as a passage of entry into official government institutions or places that require that you wear a face mask. After you get in there, oftentimes you even find those who work there, you know, their face masks are off. So if that is the situation right now, how do we begin to convince people of the urgency of the situation? Now, there is a new strain in town, which is because if it's COVID, people will say, not be COVID, it has been around for a long time and we have not died. So how do we begin to tell people that it is COVID, but there is another strain right now and this one is even more dangerous and can easily take lives? You know, how do we begin to press the urgency of that particular message home? I don't know if any of you would like to intervene on that. Let the NCDC have it.
Like what we're doing now.
Yes.
This is part of what we're supposed to be doing. Informing Nigerians, educating them, and then again to ensure that like National Orientation Agency, they have always been part of the process. We plan together, we work together, and then especially at the state level, they work with the State Ministry of Health, the State Health Promotion Officers, and ensuring that they do campaign. Now that we have new information, this is being communicated to everyone, and then there will also be need for training or even the media personnel, and then for them to know how to report, what to report, and how to get more information when they need it. The established channels, processes that we're using to get information across to them. Our microsites are information that are available, and then they can access. And when they have things they don't understand, they call us, and we have platform where we relate. And then religious leaders, for instance, also in March, the Message of Hope project was launched. And that is, the idea is for religious organizations to take ownership of these messages. And then they
I hope you're not just relying on the media to get the message to
the
religious organization.
We're working with the religious organization. For instance, USCDC is also supporting this. And then they engage Caritas Foundation and then NIFA, Nigeria Interfaith Action Association, as made up of both members from Supreme Islamic Council of Nigeria, CAN, and so on. Okay. And so that is ongoing. Now we are communicating this with them. More importantly, Salah is coming, and where people just travel, and that even makes the risk higher in villages, in different parts of the country. So we need to warn people. They don't need to travel. If it is not necessary, you can celebrate where you are. Even this is not the time we go to mosques in large numbers, and then this is the time we really need to be very cautious. So we're working with the religious organization.
That's going to be very difficult, don't you think?
Yes, but then we need to continue to tell. You know, the second wave in Nigeria started because of Christmas, because people travel for Christmas. So we can avoid this. We can learn from this. A life that we lost is very, very important for every one of us. It could be anybody. So it is not worth it to lose a life because we want to celebrate Salah or Christmas or whatever.
I'm wondering, for those who have been vaccinated, I think that they have the biggest confusion right now because they imagine that, you know, when we got the vaccines, we thought, you know, Eureka and hallelujah, it's a done deal. All you have to do is get your vaccines first and second shot. And we celebrated that, as we rightly should. Yet, we're told that even those who have gotten the vaccine still need to wear a mask. You know, you still have to do this test every time you travel or you go anywhere. Really, what effect would you say, if any, that vaccination has had on the spread of this virus?
Yeah, so I think that's a very good question. So it is a very, very good question, and let me have a paradigm shift to say that as a country during the COVID vaccination, we actually did the vaccination in isolation. The reason why there was a non-compliance to non-pharmaceutical measures was because we started the vaccination and then we did not push down, aggressive advocacy on the use of non-pharmaceutical measures. So I was discussing with some friends yesterday, I said, and we all agreed that the issue of the COVID vaccination has actually lowered down a lot of non-adherence instead of, people begin to ask just the way you ask. If we take vaccines, why do we still need to wear face masks? This is a new disease. The pathophysiology, everything about COVID is new. We are still studying it. Even advanced countries are still studying it. So why do we still need to? Now, but this brings to bear the national question. Have we actually done a vaccine efficacy test platform? Did we also set up platforms to actually monitor these vaccines? I was here last time to talk about vaccine injury, whether we had vaccine commission, domicile. And I was sharing with my brother, I said, even in the presidential task force, we're supposed to have a vaccination pillar as a component so that we have a daily reporting. So we don't do that. So people that got vaccinated, how are we sure that they have produced enough immunity towards the vaccines? How are we sure that the vaccines that left the storage facility, when they got to the field, they have not lost their potency? How are we sure that our genetic makeup do not interfere with the vaccine immunity? So those are the questions that the National Primary Healthcare with NAFDAC need to come up, and also with NCDC, to begin to answer these gray areas, these questions that we actually need to actually share with the citizens of Nigeria. So I agree with you that if we take vaccines, why do we still need to use face masks? We still need to use face masks because non-pharmaceutical measures are one of the best public health and social measures we can actually employ to actually tame this virus. So it is very important that even after we take our vaccines, we should be able to, employ the non-pharmaceutical measure. But we need platforms to actually check vaccine efficacy. My brother will agree with me that there is what is called seroconversion. So we need to actually, look at how many people got vaccinated, how many people had a threshold of antibodies that can be able to withstand this. The good news is that most of the vaccines that we have in-house can be able to handle even the new variants. So that's the good news. So, but the issue is that the vaccines are not enough. And people, we have not yet vaccinated up to 20 to 30% of the population. So we still have huge number of, we still have population at risk. So I strongly believe that we still need to do more advocacy, just like the way he said, and then we still need to do a lot of, activate our surveillance system again, to be active, not passive, and then be able to see how we push on this.
In addition to that, and I think countries that have done enough vaccination, as in they have significant proportion of their population vaccinated, we can see that the drastic reduction in transmission and then the severity, that is death of COVID-19. So vaccines are effective, no doubt about that. But one thing we also need to understand is this pandemic is evolving with different dimensions, and a lot that we did not know from the beginning. And then when it comes to vaccination, there is a lot of misinformation out there, and even before it came to Nigeria. That might explain the reason why there was focus on vaccine to deal with hesitancy, right? And then because it's something that is global, that influence is not just coming from Nigeria alone, but from outside Nigeria. This is a reality we have to deal with. We are learning, and I know we're also talking about integrating messaging, both NPI and vaccination, and then working together with NPACD and all the relevant stakeholders, National Orientation Agency, even Ministry of Information is involved in this. We're learning, and then from that lesson, then we see how we can improve on that. So we're building the ship as we are sailing it.
Also, so let me add, also the success story for France. France just came up with a mandatory policy now that all health workers must be vaccinated. And I think that we need such kind of policy in this, in our country. This is because they are also a vulnerable set of people.
They were prioritized here.
Absolutely.
Initially.
But not all of the health workers, but now...
Some of them were hesitant?
Yeah, a lot of health workers were hesitant. In fact, even most of the misinformation came from the health workers. It is for sure, yeah. So I think if we come up with mandatory policies, which are quite good, and be able to see how we can be able to manage the psyche of health workers, it will go a long way. And then, so the president of France said that, it is mandatory for all health workers. This is because they are group at risk, both internally and externally. They can be able to pick the virus from the hospital community and then transmit it to communities outside the hospital, or pick it from the communities outside the hospital and transmit it, and the concept of what we call nosocomial infection within hospital community. So it is quite key. So I think we need to re-strategize our policies and begin to see how we can come up with mandatory policies. We have reached the stage now where we need to actually bring mandatory policies.
It's very interesting, this story of vaccines, because, I mean, I just heard as we're building the ship, we're sailing it. What a lot of people will get from what you have just said is that largely, even though we're told that the vaccines, could be ready in such a short time and could be administered, we're still in the experimental stage. That's what it largely means.
No, let me explain that. What I'm saying is for the pandemic, overall, there's a lot that was not known from the beginning, and over time we continue to learn and we continue to adjust our intervention.
That's what experiments are about, isn't that?
We are still, the pandemic has not ended, and nobody can tell you that exactly this is the way to contain this
so
that pandemic.
That is an experiment.
Yes, that is, because it's a global experiment. The reason I say that is, otherwise, there would have been issue of Delta variant, Alpha variants emerging. And so we continue to adjust and until we get it right. We bring it down to the level that is not of public health importance.
So what we need to confirm right now is whether or not the vaccines that have been administered are, I don't want to say powerful enough, but maybe, for lack of a better phrase, powerful enough to combat whatever variant should crop up, say, today or tomorrow.
So, like I said to you, countries where they have vaccinated massively, they have seen significant drop in transmission. So which means, irrespective of the variant, the vaccines work. So whatever we have, we should make use of that. And by the time we start assuming that it may not work, it may not, so what options do we have? So the reality is vaccines work from countries that are using this vaccine, but then in our own situation, because we don't manufacture vaccine, and that is the challenge that we are having, we depend on importation. And then, of course, we know what happened in India. If not for that, we will have, gotten more doses, and more people will have probably been vaccinated. And the hesitancy from healthcare workers, it can be genuine, because they are in the front line, as in they are the one facing the bullet. So, but then what we need is engagement. There was even a time we did a survey, a perception survey among the healthcare workers through the Presidential Task Force platform, and then we're able to get information why they wouldn't want to take the vaccine. And another commission, one was also commissioned. So based on that information, we continue to work. Now more healthcare workers are coming up to take the vaccine. It's always like that in every society. There is this behavior model, as in people who accept early, people who adopt behavior early, people who adopt late, people who never adopt. So healthcare workers are also human beings. But what we need is continuous engagement. And then
we will let you shed a little more light on that when we come back. We really need to go to break. There'll be a little more clarity when we come back from this break. Please stay with us. Dr. Yaya Disu, Head of Risk Communications Division at the National Center for Disease Control, and also Dr. Akiela Ishako, who is a virologist, public health epidemiologist, and also a senior lecturer at the Nasarawa State University, are still here with us in the studio. We're talking about COVID-19, and especially with emphasis on this new variant. Let's take it to Lagos now, where my colleagues have questions for them.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. Dr. Disu, I'd like to stay with this conversation around vaccines and the Delta variant just a little bit longer. I recall that Pfizer recently was seeking emergency approval for a third jab of vaccine to especially protect against this Delta variant. Even AstraZeneca, there was a report, I think about 2 weeks ago, showing that a third jab actually raises immunity to the peak after 6 months of the second dose. So clearly, there's still a lot of, you referenced that, still a lot of research. But regarding this Delta variant and our vaccination drive, what do we know so far, especially in the Nigerian context?
Well, with regards to the Delta variant, we're just reporting it in Nigeria. There are investigations that are ongoing. At least we also got reports from Oyo State to find out the extent of this. And I'm sure those of us who have gotten the vaccine, and then they will also look at them, what's the proportion of those people who have the vaccines that have this virus. I'm sure that study will be done somewhere. There is a seroprevalence study that is ongoing across the nation. They are moving from state to state. Now, we may be able to get some information about the prevalence of this disease. But with regards to the variant, information is still very new. And then I know scientists, experts, we need to come together to see how to better understand how effective these vaccines are with these new variants in the country. But what is more important, like we are saying, what we have at hand that we need to use now is our NPI, non-pharmaceutical intervention, which is why we appreciate what you are doing, because the media has a role to play in this. Our sister agency, NPACDA, that is leading on the vaccination campaign, and I'm sure they are not sleeping, and then they are also aware of these variants, and they will do what is needful for us to know how to adjust whatever our intervention.
Well, let me take that same question to Dr. Ishako, only with this adjustment. Earlier, about even before the Alpha variant was as prominent as it became, there were concerns even among health professionals on the efficacy of the vaccines, which were made to address the original strain of COVID-19. Now, this new one is a lot more lethal, you tell us, 100% more lethal than the previous, the original strain, so to speak. So the question then is, how effective, I think you referenced this earlier, how effective then can we say the vaccine, the original vaccine, or rather the vaccine made for the original strain would be against this Delta variant or any other variant that will come? We hear from World Health Organization and other multinationals that it is effective, but then is that in the realm of speculation or it's in the realm of certainty?
Yeah, it's in the realm of certainty outside our system, but it is in the realm of speculation in our system. And so these are my points. Let me share a story within seconds. I was privileged to start a postgraduate program 7 years ago in one of the countries in Europe. So they asked me, have you taken yellow fever vaccine and hepatitis B vaccine? I told them yes. They still went ahead to take my blood sample and then be able to check whether I have developed antibodies or I have developed immunity towards either yellow fever or hepatitis B. They gauge the threshold of that antibody to actually ascertain whether my body immune system has actually developed antibody. Funny enough, I took hepatitis B vaccine, but the threshold was not enough. So the advice was that I need to take another dose of the hepatitis B vaccine. I was glad when a documentary was played before this section that our success story at the end of the first phase. But we need to ask a national question. How efficacious is this vaccine in Nigeria? What are the adverse reactions that we have gotten feedback from people that took these vaccines? Have we done vaccine efficacy tests on people that took this vaccine? So it is done. If you give somebody one jab or the second jab, it is done in the US and all part of Europe. You take their blood samples. You check for their antibody titer, whether they have developed antibodies to this. Have we done that? Because we must be able to do that to be able to establish that actually these vaccines are efficacious. Perhaps, to me, I don't think we have such kind of platforms. And I wish to encourage agencies to look into that direction and actually fund research in that line. So let's get people that took the vaccines. In fact, we would have even gotten people that registered for the vaccine prior to taking the jab for the first dose, collect their blood samples, to check whether they have developed antibodies or not. And then, once they take the first and the second jab, we also take their blood samples, randomly. Because Maokwe said that we are actually experimenting. So I agree with that postulation and that premises that she stood. Actually, COVID-19 is a new virus, and we are studying it. And just like this, you say, it is emerging. So it is on that ground that we can be able to say that significant percentage of Nigeria took this vaccine, and they developed certain percentage of threshold of the antibody to COVID, and so we can categorically say that this is it. So 21st century medical sciences is run by data and quality data that we can be able to have an informed decision to be able to come up with policies.
Perhaps the question you asked, Dr. Ishaku, can be answered by Dr. Disu right now. I mean, if Dr. Disu, if you can respond to what he has said about whether or not we have checked to see how efficacious the vaccines have been on those who have taken it.
Oh, that's exactly what I was trying to explain. Okay. And we may need to do a survey for us to get that information. And I'm sure the agency that is in charge of vaccination, and then they are already, they will be thinking about what to do to commission a survey. But I explained something. There are other ways by which you will know whether this vaccine is working, apart from taking blood samples or to check antibodies. Clinical evidence, like looking at those who take the vaccines and those who come down with the illness. And those are simple analyses that can be done. Maybe they can just do a survey to ask people, have you taken the vaccine? And then compare to whether they have come down with the illness, the ailment. And then particularly, and it is when you come down with the illness that they will now do genomic sequencing. Now that we have said we want to be doing genomic sequencing for every positive case. And that can give us more information about what question that you are asking. And particularly, I said, there's a seroprevalence study that is ongoing in the nation. And then that will enable us to know how many people have developed antibodies against this. Although it's a little bit trickish, because you may not know whether it is for this Delta variant or for whichever one. But at least that will also give us information that will help us to ask more questions and then to know how to take that survey in the next direction. It is an emerging situation. So as it comes, experts come together, stakeholders, and then to devise a way to address the emerging needs.
But I've noticed a trend that when discussing issues of COVID-19 in the public space, you tend to see, especially officials, I mean, of government agencies saddled with fighting this virus, try not to go too deep with the scientific stuff, the transmissibility, the symptoms of this Delta variant, for example, whether it's easier to find in the, the respiratory tract or in the lungs, those kind of technical things. And rather you just say, well, at the end of it, the most important thing is the MPIs, wear your face mask, wash your hands, and ensure social distancing and the rest. Like I said, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that deliberate? Are you trying not to put out too much scientific information out there so people, don't get, don't have all that swarming around their heads and they're not sure what to do about the information? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Thank you very much for that. And one thing about information is, it is the perspective of the person hearing this. It is what they want to see, and there is what we call selective hearing. You need to also be careful. Sometimes when you are explaining into details, people will forget the major thing, the basic things that they need to do, and they will now be judging, probably because this is found in the lungs, and this is found in the throat. And that is not the issue. But then we still explain this. We are not running away from this, but as we are agreeing that this happens, but we also need to let people know that what you really need to protect against this virus, irrespective of the strain, is our non-pharmaceutical intervention. By the time you juxtapose that, they always remember that, okay, if irrespective of the strain, how it is transmitted, but this is still the solution to it. Otherwise, somebody will not tell you that, okay, maybe this measure is not working, what else do we do? And you give room for misinformation. People will now start thinking of all manners of things, local remedies they need to use. So that's why we're trying to say that we're not running away from it. We agree with that. this is what has been stated, the fact that has been established. But then, this is also the facts that and the way to also address this, that simple measures that are already effective, that people already know, we also need to let them know that this is also effective. So that's what we are trying to do here. Right. It is not that we're running away from the scientific fact, but we're also trying to balance it for people to keep remembering that the solution is what is more important at hand for us. Leave the details to scientists, people who are in the lab, to do their job, but leave what people can do. Give it leg, allow them to know what they can do and do it.
Okay, so let me take this to Dr. Ishaku, because we've said time and again during the course of this conversation that we're learning along the way, really. You've said that it's a research, it's some sort of experiment. But you know the tricky part about this is the fact that people want information, and they'll get it by whatever means. I mean, there's Google available, and they want to do a deep dive. Yes, they didn't maybe study science in school. They probably don't have a science degree, but they want to really know from the very little microorganism phase to the bigger one. So people will definitely find out these information. So I know we're still learning, but how important is it to, lay all our cards bare? Like, this is what we know, this is what we don't know, this is what we know scientifically, this is what we don't know scientifically. Do you think that can also build some trust in this process?
This can build trust, but it will build trust. So I agree with you on that premises. In fact, I am a proponent of we need to have a paradigm shift to actually shift from the conventional way of passing out information to a way of passing out information that even a shoe shiner, even a cassava seller on the street, a market woman can be able to understand this. So this brings to the table that we need to actually re-strategize even the way we communicate scientific communications. In fact, I was discussing with some members of Senate in my university, and I was sharing with them. I said, what stops us from allowing people that read journalists to actually take degree courses, postgraduate courses, and advanced diploma in scientific communications, and even in public health? So in this country, we restrict them from actually. So because this COVID has really exposed vulnerability in terms of transmitting, scientific communications. And a lot of times, journalists actually, transmit this information, scientific information, with distortions, and just like the way Dr. Disu said, selective perspective in terms of hearing, or even in terms of reading. So what we need to do as a country is actually sit down and to look at where we have gone wrong. Have we passed the right message to the right audience? What is wrong with the injection of the message that we have passed? Are people reacting to the injection of the message we have passed? What is the feedback? We need to sit down and begin to see people like Kayode Ayo and Amaokwe to begin to actually take some modules courses in scientific communication, which you guys are doing great things, But actually, journalists that are coming behind, they need to pass, because we have a lot of fake news. We have a lot of news, platforms that dish out fake news, and their inability to communicate proper scientific message.
Okay, I wasn't quite a fan of science, so now that you put me on the spot, well, we could do that. But let me take this back to Dr. Disu and find out, in terms of education, awareness, and the rest. This Twitter suspension, I mean, the NCDC had quite a following on Twitter, and there was a lot of engagement. In fact, a lot of people access information from the NCDC via Twitter. How much has this affected your information dissemination, the awareness, especially now that we're seeing a Delta variant and there's a lot of concern?
Okay, what we have done with the ban on Twitter, because we have over 2 million people following us on Twitter, is for us to quickly do evaluation of the impact or assessment of the impact of Twitter ban on what we do. And that enables us to understand how Nigerians are also following us on other social media platforms like Telegram, Instagram, and then Facebook. And then, but we are using more of those ones now. And then, so we only want to just encourage Nigerians that there are other social media platforms that we are present, where we are available, then where they can still access this information. Our website is also there, and our microsites when it comes to COVID-19, they are there. And then more of traditional media. We need more of that now. Now that people cannot get information easily from they can't get information from Twitter again. So our relationship with the traditional media will also help us to let them drive traffic to those platforms that are available for us. So if you also go to our website, you will also see a link that will direct them to those things. And then we're also looking at a long-term strategy in case this may happen to Facebook in future. What are we going to do so that we don't suffer that deficit? And again, but then we continue to, it's an emerging experience, and we continue to learn from that situation.
Well, some people say maybe well, it's a good thing you're already imagining all the different scenarios that could come up, you know, assuming the fate that befell Twitter also befalls Facebook. But some people will say maybe that's one of the reasons why you should engage with stakeholders to say, you know, this is one of the downsides of this. Can we review what is happening in this particular area? But as Kayode did say, you don't want to go too much into the science of this. But some people will say that Nigerians, you'll be surprised at how intelligent they can be, and so how sometimes this information might be able to help. Assuming, for instance, they're not properly diagnosed. With the knowledge that they have, they might be able to seek further or ask, deeper questions of their doctors when it comes to diagnosis. And that's why we put out some of those questions sometimes. So I'd like you to, just for the sake of clarity, as we wrap up, is it true then that it cannot be detected in the respiratory tract sometimes, this particular variant, because it travels easily and faster into the lungs?
Yes, from the published scientific data that we have. But in our own situation in Nigeria, because we still have very few cases diagnosed, we may not be able to know. But data will show that over time, or maybe in Nigerian context, this is how it is for us. So it's as simple as that.
We'll continue to keep in touch with the figures. We hope that they will go down.
Yes, because of what we do.
Yes.
By what we do, then we should not expect magic.
Are we going to do bigger testing samples to see just how fast this is going? Or
yes,
are we just going to keep waiting for people to present symptoms
before
we test?
Now, we are rolling out RDTs.
What's RDTs?
Rapid Diagnostic Test kits. And then that makes it faster because you can get your result immediately. And then we're working with the states and we're encouraging them to expose people to be able to do RDT, build capacity of different institutions, even congregation setting, even religious organizations, maybe when they want to have programs, they can use this RDT. So we're working with the state to build capacity to make supplies available, and that is another way to make up for the long term that you have to wait for PCR to be ready. In a situation where RDT is positive, and then when maybe there is need for us to do confirmation with PCR, then that will be done. And before I go, in our training, when we do training for journalists or media professionals, there is a segment that we say, translating scientific information into understandable language. We normally take people on that so that the journalists can report accurately. We are mindful of that. But I'm just also talking from experience when I interact with people, and what is really important is what they drop. I'm not saying Nigerians are not intelligent.
Oh, yes,
so Nigerians are intelligent. So I also learn from what he has said, but I still want to say that we need to balance the information.
Thank you very much.
And when he was...
Gentlemen,
when my elder brother was...
We're out of time. If you can say it in 30 seconds, I'll let you. But we're totally out of time. I have to thank you both for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning and sharing insight. We do hope that the third wave, that, it will not be as bad as the second or the first, and that, Nigerians will take heed of some of the measures that you have already spoken about this morning. You talked about the hands campaign, and we do hope that people will continue to abide by the protocols. Thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily. Dr. Yaya Disu is the head of Risk Communications Division at the National Center for Disease Control, and Dr. Akieda Ishaku is a virologist and public health epidemiologist, and also a senior lecturer at the Nasarawa State University. Once again, gentlemen, thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for this segment. We will take a break. There's a lot of talk around security. We'll have some perspective on that when we come back from this break. Please stay with us.
Kaduna State in the last 2 years may have become one of the epicenters of banditry attacks and kidnappings in the northwest of the country, with several people abducted from their homes, schools, hospitals, or even while commuting.
I lost my classmate, my friend.
The recent abduction of 121 students of Bethel Secondary School in Chikun local government area, followed by Sunday's abduction of the Emir of Kajuru and 13 members of his family at his residence, are just a few of the latest attacks, with several others going unreported.
What will I tell her? What will I tell her?
Figures from the second quarter security report are alarming.
774 citizens were kidnapped, 222 citizens were killed, 266 sustained injuries as a result of this. There is a looming food insecurity because thousands of farmers are unable to access their farmlands.
This meeting of the Kaduna State Security Council is to review the situation and identify areas of improvement. Worried about the attacks, Governor Nasir El-Rufai calls for simultaneous and unconventional approaches to the fight.
There are simply not enough boots on the ground to have credible deployments in most places to protect communities, deter crime, and enforce law and order. Therefore, the state government must be empowered and supported by the federal government to make up the manpower deficit in the security sector. An unconventional approach is required to enable us better protect our communities.
In the meantime, there is a plan to contain the situation.
We have been quite okay, that no matter what happens, we may not have enough. But we have been given the directive to carry out that instruction. So all vulnerable schools will be monitored and surveillance will be mounted in these schools. That was a directive given by the Commander General of Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps.
Casualty figures from the bandit attacks are high, but the agony of loss of lives is even more gripping. Citizens and residents in the affected communities can only hope that the nightmare will end sooner than later.
I didn't expect it.
Well, that's the next conversation we're having now. Colonel Yomi Dare joins us this morning. He is a retired Army officer and former Director, Army Legal Services. He's currently a security consultant. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on board.
Yeah, let me take a historical trajectory to begin this conversation. Progress as we go. When this whole insecurity thing started with the kidnappings in the Niger Delta, it was just there. And then the next thing we began to hear about pockets of insurgency in the Northeast, but specifically in one particular state. And now it seems like the only state we are talking about, largely, most of the time, is Kaduna. And with the release of that report from the Kaduna State that in 3 months have been 222 people killed, 2,774 people kidnapped within just 1/4 of a year. What really should we be looking at now? Because now it's just one state that is giving us this. One state was giving us concern before. Now another state is giving us in a different region altogether, even though there are pockets of insecurity issues all over the nation. Exactly what do you think is playing out?
Thank you very much, Ayo. Honestly, listening to this report coming from the state government, it's really sad, very sad. Sad in the sense that if the state government can come up to tell us that 774 from their own records, and usually, I mean, don't quote me, the government would not like, to give you the actual figures. So if they can come up to tell us, I mean, you can be sure that this, in reality, the figure must be much more than what we have heard. So, what message does this send across? It's a red alert. It's a red alert. Nowhere is safe right now. Because what played out at the onset in Maiduguri region or the northeast is exactly what's being replicated now. Now you find government even telling schools to shut down. Okay? So, well, not too much of a talk shop, because what we should be looking at is solution. How do we get out of this?
And that's why I'm asking,
yes,
if we have even been able to decrypt the real issue,
yes,
that we are dealing with. What do you think we've been able to identify what the real issue that we are dealing with is? Well, we have the general, the broad term insecurity.
Yes.
But shouldn't we be able to decrypt and then deal decisively?
Absolutely. In my opinion, to my understanding, I think what is playing out right now, the root cause of this, one, I think, is illiteracy, which is hopefully being addressed. But of course, how do you now even address this without security? So there's a challenge there. In illiteracy, poverty, there's abject poverty. Okay? And then you also look at the issue of marginalization, because that has been a recurring thing. Don't forget that Kaduna, I think it's about the fourth largest or most populous state in the federation, and is highly cosmopolitan. Okay? But again, the indigenes themselves, there's the problem that they've always had, the northern and the southern Kaduna. So I think there's a lot in the hands of...
Who then is being marginalized here?
Well,
and how is this marginalization leading to this insecurity you're talking about?
Of course, if people are not happy, if people believe that there's no equity, there's no justice, okay? Because at the onset we had the herdsmen crisis, okay? And who are the herdsmen? Of course, the herdsmen are, the Fulani people, predominantly, okay? And of course, the southern Kaduna people are known to be farmers. And typically, the farmers and the herdsmen. The herdsmen, they rear their cattle, and the farmers, cultivate their farms. And when the herdsmen rear their cattle into the territory of the farmers, what happens? They destroy their crops. And you expect them to fold their arms and be happy? No, there's an issue there. And don't also forget that because of these crises, other criminal gangs have also taken advantage.
So, in other words, while we seem to be done with cattle rustling and all of that,
yes,
because there was also that huge debate about making castigating one ethnic group as, you know, the criminal gang, just as you have just done now,
Yes.
which that one seems to have tapered down quite a lot. But the issue of kidnapping is what is, on the front burner, so to speak, now. So I'm just wondering, if we have been able to track it, you have listed a number of things, that could be responsible for it.
Yes.
So talking about solutions, the way you went about it, do you think we have even begun to deal with the issue or even identify what the issue is enough to be able to do it as we should?
I think we have identified what the issues are. The problem right now is how to tackle these identified issues. And we have to be holistic. We have to be realistic about it. We have to be transparent about it. Okay? I recall that specifically in Kaduna State, there has been a lot of, judicial commissions, boards of inquiry. What are how far have we gone at implementing, the recommendations of these bodies? Monies have been spent in constituting these commissions. So a lot of their recommendations are just lying down in some offices on the shelves, gathering dust. How far? They should pick up these things, okay?
So,
and then, yes.
Pardon me. So when you say how far have we gone, you're referring to government?
Absolutely.
That's the Kaduna State government.
Absolutely, Kaduna State government. And I think at this point in time, too, the federal government need to step in.
Okay, we'll talk about that federal government angle, but don't forget the president in that interview saying that state governments should do their jobs, as it were, protect their states. And he referenced a few governors that came to Abuja, and he sent them back and said, well, you campaigned to be governors. So how about you deliver the campaign promise of securing your people? But I'd like to get your thoughts on this. I mean, you talked about poverty. You've talked about marginalization as some of the root causes of what we're seeing play out in Kaduna specifically, and perhaps across the country. But when a group of people come out en masse, kidnap students, over 100 students, for example, what we saw at Bethel Baptist School, and then they're demanding millions, tens of millions from parents who put their children in, I imagine how much they're paying as school fees. I imagine how much those children take to school per day. I imagine how much those parents earn. Clearly not as much. So if a group of people are demanding tens of millions from people who clearly cannot afford it, does it add up for you?
It doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. And if you ask me, that's a failure of government. It shouldn't be happening.
No, I'm even saying that. How will the group, you do feasibility studies, right?
Yes.
It's not a business, clearly, but they will do feasibility studies. They mark their victims, and they know how much, at least they have an idea that this victim can afford this.
Yes.
So if a bandit kidnaps someone who clearly cannot afford millions of naira and is demanding for millions of naira,
yes.
I want to believe that the bandits are not stupid. They know what they're doing. So
Of
I'm
course.
saying, does it make sense? Is this really about ransom? That's what I'm saying.
Well, you see, because the polity has been hit up and people have taken advantage, undue advantage, okay? Because here we are. What are we talking about? People are being, there's fragmentation here now. You have people going to have meetings, with insurgents, bandits. So when these people know where they are, and then they are being escorted by government, security agents. So, for crying out loud, they are not ghosts.
Are you saying that the government isn't doing the needful?
Honestly, I believe there's still much more for the government to do in the area of security.
Such as?
Because the truth be told, control of security is in the hands of the government. We say in the security parlance that security is everybody's business. Yes, it's everybody's business. But the control the control, the command and control is in the hands of the government.
Okay.
And furthermore, at this point in time, I believe what we should be looking at is beyond what maybe just the Military Joint Task Force is doing. I think we should also incorporate civilians into the Joint Task Force operation. So the civilian Joint Task Force, just as was introduced at the early stage of the Boko Haram in the Northeast.
I think that's a point that has been raised. And we'll get in some of the recommendations because the House of Reps had that security summit and they presented a report to the president highlighting...
That's what I'm saying.
Some recommendations.
We've had summits over summits over summits.
Okay.
What recommendations? Have we implemented these recommendations?
I mean, fantastic.
Let's even go back to the ones we had in Kaduna. Because Kaduna State has been a recurring thing.
Okay, so
from religion,
right,
to ethnic, to everything you can think about. Okay. And even recently, we had the labor crisis. Even right now, the labor crisis is still on.
Sort of on. But I want to quickly touch on this before we move to those recommendations. Now, so the Kaduna State government gave out those figures, very alarming figures, really. And people are asking, or they've asked from time to time. I think even the IGP was in Kaduna last week, and when he was speaking with journalists, they asked him about motivating the men, and he said he was going to employ the reward and punishment approach, sort of. And I believe punishment means when there's a lax or when someone is caught napping, there will be some sort of punishment to serve as a deterrent to others. In terms of people taking responsibility either for the success or failure in this point, failures. Do you think there have been enough punitive measures? Because we see some security lapses and fingers are pointed to perhaps this person or this person. Do you think we've done enough punitive measures in that security area?
I don't think so. I don't think so. You see, because again, when you are pointing accusing fingers at the security bodies or agencies, when you go deep into it, you find out that there's usually some interference. Maybe they are not allowed to work within, to exercise the full authority that they're expected to.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. When you say interference, there is a law, and then there are functions, and then there is an order to go and get some things done. The primary function of the police, for instance, is prevention of crime, not fighting of crime. Do they need in what way can there be an intervention or whatever it is that will make them not to perform their duties?
Well, the situation now, as far as I'm concerned, is beyond policing. I mean, what the police can really handle. And that is why you have the Joint Task Force. Okay? The recently constituted Joint Task Force.
So how are they not allowed to do their jobs?
Well, I think that would be, that would be an issue for another day. But
what you just said now, I'm just trying to wrap my head around it, because if that happens, then we could just as well raise our hands in surrender and say we can't deal with this anymore.
Well, how do you justify a situation whereby, there are attacks or community leaders have informed security agents that, look, we have warning that people are coming to attack us. Okay? And indeed, the people came in to attack them.
And
until after the attack, nobody has come in.
That has happened several times.
Yes, that's what we're saying.
It's really debilitating. So the question then would be, what is it that hinders action on the part of security agencies when they have actionable intelligence? What do they need to do their jobs?
Don't forget that you don't even have enough security forces. You don't have enough. There's not enough. As we speak, I believe that the military is so overstretched. It's overstretched.
Colonel.
And then the resources, the logistics.
I
And you
remember
know
for how long.
Nigeria,
Right.
especially on the northern flank, the borders are so porous.
Colonel, we've heard this.
Yes.
I can't really say for how long, but for as long as I can remember, talk about underfunding, under personnel, as it were. I mean, you just referenced the porosity of the border. This is something we've heard for decades. Is it really hard? Maybe this is simplistic, I don't know, but is it really hard to solve this? I mean, just say, we need to resolve this. Let's resolve this.
Well, that's why we must, be holistic in our approach to solving our problems. Because what we do most of the time is just talk. We have tea parties, summits, and that ends it.
The question is it difficult? Is it rocket science? Is it difficult for us to solve these problems?
I don't think so. And one of our major problems, again, apart from those root causes of those things we have identified, is corruption. It's corruption. Here we are, people taking advantage of a bad situation to enrich themselves. What about that? In this same country, we had what happened at the IDP camps when senior, very highly placed government officials had to inflate contracts of just to cut grass. They want to cut grass. You are not even talking about feeding. So there's a lot of problems. But we know what those problems are. But the thing is, we should be honest enough
to
stand up and solve this problem.
Yeah, one thing that the Constitution was clear about is who leads security in the country, and that definitely is talking about the police.
Yes.
So that leads us to some of the executive actions proposed by the House of Representatives following the security summit that they had. And a good number of those recommendations talks about the police, strengthening the police force, equipping the police force, and things like that. I'm just wondering, because there are those who believe that the police was about the strongest, most funded, so to speak, agency of security in the country for some years before we got into the melee that we have found ourselves now. Even if we solve the problem of the police now, as in the police is able to do what they're supposed to do now, how do we sustain that? Perhaps that is the challenge, equipping the police on a sustainable basis.
You see, Ayo, let's be very honest about it. The police that we have, in my opinion, is a very strong police force. But we have gone beyond. You know what our population is right now. So let's break it down. What stops us from implementing state policing, community policing? Just because, ego, people just still want to just be in charge. In charge of what? There must be decentralization of the police force for effective policing, for effective management. The other time, when the IGP came on board, it was like, oh, withdraw all policemen that are not, from politicians, from people who are not supposed to have them. But I can tell you, and you can take it to the bank, once you have your money, you can have a retinue of policemen following you without anybody even bothering what your business is. Should it be so? When we don't even have enough policemen, taking care of the citizens.
So perhaps that's...
And right now, what you have is, if anything happens, somebody is coming, the politician is coming to visit the community, he comes with a retinue of policemen. And then and the moment he leaves, they all live with him.
So perhaps
and then the people are left.
Part of the recommendations. That should have been part of the recommendations.
Absolutely.
Interestingly, yesterday I saw a policeman accompanying a truck of goods. just, but you know also
even these days you find soldiers too accompanying soldiers, which is very, very bad.
But we just talked
That's my constituency.
We just talked about the security situation.
Yes.
So you might understand that context to an extent, the fact that, I mean, these are goods. They're meant to service a particular area, and they're not sure of the security of those goods, especially along the highways. So, I mean, maybe that's an argument for that. But, you know, taking a look at the recommendations, they asked for private security to be called into the fray, as it were, to be a part of this. Do you think there should be an extent to how far private security can go? Because, I mean, you see some headlines saying mercenaries. So how should that framework work?
You see, again, there must be a regulatory body, authority. I mean, the private security companies, for instance, are managed by the Security and Civil Defense Corps, okay? The other time, the Office of the National Security Advisor made a public statement disowning a particular security body, okay? So there's so much proliferation such that you don't even know who is who. So there's need for us to properly regulate, okay? Let these people patronize genuine and approved private security organizations, okay? And I think we should also go beyond, say, restricting bearing of arms to the formal security agencies, because right now even the customs, they carry arms. I mean, the immigration, they carry arms. National Security and Civil Defense, they carry arms. They all have armories. So you have these private security organizations most of them being, you know, operated by maybe retired personnel who are already, you know, used to the issue of arms. So once there's approval, you know, once they are documented and, you know, approved by maybe the Office of National Security Advisor or I mean NSCDC, as the case may be, they should be they should approve and allow them to bear arms.
What about the questions of abuse?
Sorry?
Questions of misuse. I mean, we have issues even with the
formal.
Police. So
yes,
questions of misuse of firearms, training, and what kind of firearms anyway should they be allowed to carry? How should that work as well?
Well, that's what I'm talking about now, regulatory authority. Because even right now, we're talking, arms are all over the place.
Well, we've heard that even from the president. But one of the recommendations that's also gone out there, and I think this is something that we should actually look at exhaustively, one of the executive actions proposed by the House of Representatives is that the executive should use all means at its disposal to require the creation of a protocol that will compel intelligence sharing among all security agencies. I'm surprised that this is even an issue, because I can remember as far back, I think, what was it, year before the last and last year, even this year, we've heard it from various sources, including the president, asking, literally giving an order for all security agencies to collaborate. Just recently, the National Assembly, I think the House of Representatives, also came up with the idea to look at all laws governing security in the country and looking at areas in which there are overlaps, separate those overlaps so that your living room is your living room, you don't overlap into mine, and, you know, in a manner of speaking. So in terms of collaboration, sharing information, what do you think is responsible for the various security agencies seemingly creating islands for themselves and not collaborating?
Well, because as we speak, there's a proliferation of security agencies. Okay? Too many cooks. They say spoils the broth.
I thought they said the more the merrier.
Well, not in this case, you know, because whether you like it or not, there's this rivalry. Okay? Okay? My Mercedes is bigger than yours.
Colonel Dari, I'm sorry.
Even in the US,
we are supposed to be on the same team, aren't we?
You remember what happened before 9/11? They had issues too. And everybody trying to, you know, prove that, oh, I mean, we can handle it alone, we are in charge.
So how can we deal with that issue so that rather than compete, so to speak, they are actually working together? How can we deal with that?
Well, I think the government needs to bring the heads of these agencies together, you know, and then on the round table. I know they've been doing it, but we need to do more.
One of the challenges, you know, just as we round off, one of the challenges that many have also raised, which may not be spoken among security agencies, is that while the police is supposed to play the lead in internal security, the army, for instance, is sometimes unwilling to follow the lead of the police. Do you agree with that?
Well, not entirely. Maybe in some cases, yes, but not entirely.
Why does that happen at all?
Well, again, I think there's need for each agencies to have what you call mutual respect and understanding. Okay? There is. So there shouldn't be, there's need to really educate, especially the junior ranks, because you find such, you know, issues coming up amongst the junior ranks. Okay? And then there's for example, you know, there's no need for unhealthy or unnecessary competition. You know that the military is a force. The police is civil.
Well, anyway, I'm wondering why that will be an issue. But then, you probably know better than I do. We're completely run out of time here now. We have to thank you very much for being part of our conversation this morning. Colonel Yomi Dare is former director, Army Legal Services, and is a security consultant. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you.
So we have some of your messages as well this morning.
Oh, yes. Let's begin with Henry's mail on COVID-19 third wave in Nigeria. It says, again, Nigeria's low testing capacities question whatever statistics are being put forward. The EpiCurve, it says in parentheses, in quotes, is a population-based statistic which is obtained from deliberate mass testing and not that of opportunity. So let us all take heed once again and take responsibility.
Oladun Abimbola says, on the Akoka-made electric bus, it is unfortunate that this great innovation by Nigerians will die like all other Nigerian innovations. Federal government or any other government cannot sustain things like this, but private investors are the only hope. Why can't this innovation be thrown to the public to invest in, and then a supervisory body see to it that the fund generated is actually used to produce more of this bus? Akoka has produced this bus, and for sure they will not be able to commercialize it, nor even be able to research further on it without any substantial funding. But I'm surprised that this is even an issue, because we have a national automotive policy. We even have a national automotive agency, so to speak.
The agency was there.
So I'm wondering why this will be an issue. Oh, does Markwe have an answer?
Well, if we were to even preclude that national automotive policy, this is where venture capitalists should come in, because if this sort of thing can produce profit at the end of the day, why shouldn't people who are interested in making money be able to say, let's look at a viability plan of this invention and see how we can put money in this and, you know, sell it to as many universities, as many estates as will need shuttles as possible, and see what comes out of that. That's how it works in many other places, maybe based on the national automotive policy, if that supports it. But of course, there is a space for venture capitalists. Let's take a look at this one from Oshinowa Kingsley, who says, we need to pay close attention to those coming in through our borders to avoid mass importation, intensify efforts in observing all safety protocols to curb speedy transmissions, encourage our health workers to be more diligent and dexterous against clinical spread, and the government to be more decisive in making relevant policies. I was talking about the third wave of COVID-19 now. He says we can't go through another lockdown and we won't survive the Indian experience. So as I did say before, we're not special. If it happened to India, it can happen to us. We need to be careful. I think that's what Oshinowo Kingsley is also emphasizing this morning. Oh yeah, and there's one more. IPO says, state of the state. It says a situation where millions of children are on the streets begging for alms while their mates in other regions are in school in 2021 is a time bomb for the country now and in the nearest future if not checked. We do not need a soothsayer to tell us that this is an easy recruitment ground for criminals. Too many things to be put right in our country. That's why sometimes you wonder, when there is so much work, how could there be so much unemployment? That's the big question. Well, something to ponder on. Thank you so much for sending your mails as well and being a part of the conversation this morning. We'll never take it for granted. Thank you for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun-Yusuf.
Honestly, that's something to chew on, Maokwe. I'm Kayode Okikele.
Have a wonderful day. I'm Ayo Makinde.